we shall kick off, hopefully. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. This is a session hopefully you're intending to come to. Net Zero, just trying to give you an update on the work that we've done and things for you to think about, hopefully going forward into next year. The usual sort of housekeeping rules apply. So if you could keep your mics off. If you do have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. If we can get any interaction here, all the merrier. But we've got quite a packed schedule, so we shall crack on, hopefully, with me sharing my screen and just taking you through really some of the key points of what we've done. So just updating on net zero. Firstly, really, it's to sort of define what is net zero. It's something that isn't green. There's obviously plenty of other green claims around, whether it's plastics or recycling, but put simply, it's balancing the emissions to any kind of sequestering or avoided emissions to get to a zero emissions net total. And just putting it in context, this is a map from the Place-Based Climate Action Network, which is PCAN, about a number of councils that have declared climate emergencies. The colour coding is when they are targeting to reach net zero, with the cooler colours being the further in the distance and the greys where they've actually set no target. So as you can see, this was a report at the end of 2020, 78% of all local governments in the UK have declared a climate emergency. So the chances are it is in your authority's work plan, certainly on their agenda. It's something we'll all be working towards more and more as we move forward. And unless something incredible happens, it's not going to go away anytime soon. It's only going to be something we're all working more on. And as the report there highlights, whilst 3/4 have declared a climate emergency, only 62% have produced new or refreshed climate action plans. So whether your authority has a climate action plan, whether you're able to contribute to it, just being able to understand what your authority is planning to do so you can contribute to it. And obviously all of this, and from the local delivery team, has the more narrow focus of regulatory delivery. Your regulators, you're not dealing with the wider beneficial aspects of net zero. It's how you can build that into your normal interactions. One of the points there that it talks about is where there are local climate action plans, they're all around mitigation. And mitigation is avoiding or reducing the emissions rather than actually adapting our behaviour or systems so the emissions don't happen in the first place. And it's often targeted at social inequalities, economic regeneration and general trying to build back better in a more positive, greener way. So how can we support? We fully appreciate that we don't want to give you another plate to spin. You've got too many plates spinning already, resources are stretched. Obviously COVID is still with us and you've got more work than you can handle. So while we don't want to give you another plate to spin, if it's possible that net zero can be included in one of those plates, there's the potential we might be able to try and support you. One of the ways that we can do that is actually just sharing your stories, sharing your work. If you have good practice, good initiatives, we can share them via our strategic regional networks, primary authority regional groups, and the general bulletins that we put out. And I can foresee this being something going forward that is happening more and more when people are actually doing something that is having a benefit, sharing it to that wider regulatory group. We did have some funding this year. We still do have some funding to support net zero projects. and we'll hear from Mike Berry in a moment. But just so you're clear, the funding sort of criteria that we need to look at is that it's around simplifying the effective delivery of regulation. We have to have that regulatory focus because that's what our team do. We are the local delivery team supporting you as local regulators. It should support businesses and it needs to be regulator-led. I know a lot of organisations, even growth hubs, want to do work, but it has to be regulator-led. And just examples of some of the things that I've spoken to people about. There were trading standards officers looking at whether they could produce a toolkit for farmers to help them deal with more extreme weather events. How do they maintain animal welfare in extreme heat, extreme wet conditions? I've also spoken to Gary Parkinson Fraser in Rochdale. They have an eco-business scheme that they're trying to relaunch. It was originally launched pre-pandemic and they're looking to relaunch that. And I've also spoken to people about greenwashing claims and things like that, where sort of false claims are being made. And again, this is something I can foresee only growing and becoming more of an issue as everyone wants to advertise their product as being environmentally friendly. So it's really asking you to consider net zero in your normal work and to look for opportunities that an element of that can be brought in. Final point there, training. We're looking at trying to get some training on heat pumps because the government's ambition is this is going to grow exponentially. And I think we all can foresee that road traders are going to enter into this area. So we're looking at producing a training video where it can give regulators a frame of reference on what heat pumps are, how they work, what can go wrong, and the claims that can be made around them. And we're also looking at whether there's the option we can provide some carbon literacy training, but I'll come on to that a little bit more later. So I'm going to end my screen sharing and hand over to Mike Berry, who very kindly has joined us to talk about his wasted food project. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Stuart. Okay, so thanks to Stuart for his introduction, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes chatting about the food project, the wasted food project that we've got at Mendip, developed through the funding from the OPSS BEIS. So next slide, please. So just an introduction. My name is Michael Berry. I work at Mendip District Council. I'm an environmental health officer as one of my roles. So that obviously involves going out, working with businesses, and doing food hygiene inspections. So I'll chat a bit about that. I'll chat about who we're working with on the project, the types of interventions that we've got planned for different businesses, different sectors, the aims of the project, the feedback that we've had so far. So the project isn't complete at the moment. It will be completed at the end of March and a report will follow that. And just ideas that we've got from reducing the wasted food. So next slide. So yes, as I just said, I'm an environmental health officer. We go out and visit food businesses, but I think what is important with regards to environmental health is trying to get that intelligence from businesses as well, because you could just focus on food, which sort of supports the business, but if you could look at the business as a whole, so we try and get intelligence into what they're struggling with, what works well within a business, so it's gathering that information. So we chat to businesses and we work closely with economic development to see what grants are available for those businesses. But one of the things that I found with the businesses is when discussing their food waste, what happens with their food waste. And a lot of the businesses that I've visited, the food businesses, put their food waste in the bin. They have this one bin that they put all their food waste in. So I asked the question, why don't you separate out your waste? Why don't you recycle? And they come back and say it's actually cheaper to put all their waste in one bin than it is to separate them out. So I thought that was really bizarre and a really backward way of thinking, but it's just the way it is at the moment. And this was similar across many businesses in Mendip. So I'm working with I'm part of the Better Business for All, Heart of the Southwest group. So with Stuart's help, we put in a bid to see if we could put together a project on how we could reduce wasted food in the food and hospitality sector. Okay, next slide, please. So when I researched it further, there was like a lot of alarming stats associated with wasted food, which I was probably naive and didn't understand as a food safety officer. But the more you research it, you think, wow, this is really something that really hits hard. When you think that 1/3 of food is wasted in the food and hospitality industry, which is 33%, that's an incredible amount. Across the globe, overall, 1 in 9 children in the world goes hungry, so they need food, and we're wasting 1/3 of our food. So it's a national issue, it's a global issue. $940 billion is lost in wasted food, which is phenomenal amount, and that money could be spent a lot better. And another thing that did surprise me is 8 to 10% of greenhouse gases are attributed to wasted food. And people talk about the aviation industry, plastics, etc. And the 8 to 10% is higher than the aviation and plastics industry put together. So we're looking at really startling figures on how big an impact wasted food is across the industry. Next slide, please. So for who can I work with on this project? So I've got all these businesses, companies that I'm working with and get to promote this project. So the Waste Resource Action Programme, commonly known as WRAP. So they work with governments, businesses and communities to deliver practical solutions to improve resource efficiency and help us use resources more sustainably. So these have been a really good help, really useful insight, really lots of useful information on their website. And we're working with them to get these guardians of grub, to get the businesses, hospitality, the food sectors to sign up to be a guardian of grub, where they're actually championing to improve their wasted food and have a real ethos about reducing their food and being good for the environment. And then they can download certificates at the end. Another interesting company that I've been in contact with is a company called Oz Harvest. They're based in Australia. They were founded by Ronnie Khan in 2004, and they're looking at food. They are a food rescue organisation. So Australia's aim, similar to ours, is to halve food waste by 2030. And if you think 2030 is 8 years away, it's 8 years away, and people don't realise that yet. That ball is rolling down that slope. The Oz Harvest, they want to reconnect Australia to the value of food and make food waste a thing of the past. So they want Australians to really value the food that they've got and reduce their wasted food. The good thing about Oz Harvest is they can influence, have a good impact about influence government policy. So they're putting together these projects, and these projects are anything from educating children, which is a great thing that Australia do, is they have these wasted food projects and educate children on looking after their food and not wasting their food. Another concept that they've got is they've got stickers that they give to food businesses that say "Use me first." So you put them on a shelf in your fridge, and it would be a "Use me first." So you'd use that food first, so you get less waste. So they've been really good to work with. The Federation of Small Businesses has been a really good company to work for promoting it amongst the businesses and getting their buy-in. So obviously there's businesses that sign up to be membership of the Federation of Small Businesses. So this has been a great resource to get that buy-in. We obviously work with the Growth Hub as part of our Better Business for All and our partnership. So that's a really good one to get their buy-in as well, because they have the contact with the businesses. So if they can advise and help be part of our project, that's really good. Councillors are really on board with it. Councillors are on board with it because it's a green issue. You're looking at reducing wasted food. So that really is a good one for councillors to buy in. It's especially good when it's an election year, so they're really more focused on it. So that's great that we've got councillors working with our businesses promoting that. The media team, they're fully supportive of it. So we're looking at doing a press release for the Food Waste Action Week in March and developing our message. But the interesting thing with the media is we're looking at changing our media message. So the typical media message would be what we do, how we do, and why we do it. We're actually looking at changing that around to say why we're doing this, how we're doing it, and what we're doing, just to get that message, to get the buy-in better from a behavioural science point of view. That seems to have more effect for getting businesses to buy in and getting more interest in it. Obviously, as I've said, we've been working with BEIS and the OPSS, so they've been great support, and thank you, Stuart. And we've also got a consultancy company in called Net Zero Now, who work with companies such as Coca-Cola and Pernod. So we've got them involved in the project just to do the one-to-one with the businesses that I'll chat about a little later on. Next slide, please. So part of the project is looking at different interventions on what works with different businesses. So at the moment, we've done one-to-one visits with different sectors. So we're not just, it's food and hospitality, which you'd commonly associate with your pubs, your bars, your restaurants, etc. But we're also looking at things like schools and hospitals and nurseries and seeing how we can reduce wasted food from them. Schools are very, very interested in the project. They're looking at signing up for Guardians of Grub, so that's great to get in. Hospitals, we've had interest in. Food hygiene inspections, as the food safety officers go out and do the food hygiene inspections, they can now chat about wasted food and signpost to the Guardians of Grub and various resources that they've got to reduce wasted food. So we've got food hygiene inspections that visit every single food premise across a certain amount of time. Use those skills that they've got from the wasted food project to actually help educate the business. So I think that's a great one we've got. Because we've got a large number of businesses across our district, it's not practical to go visit all those businesses with our officers or one-to-one visits. So what we've got is we've sent out an email and telephone calls to those businesses just to see what effect that has, see if that's a positive effect. At the start of the project, we were hoping to do an e-learning package just to see how that benefits businesses, see whether we could get businesses to do an e-learning project and see what the result of that would be. Sadly, at the last minute, the company that we had to do the e-learning project pulled out, so we couldn't go down that route, but that's potentially something for the future. And as I've said, we've got this specialist consultancy company in to chat about net zero for the businesses. And that's not just net zero from a food waste point of view. They're actually looking at the waste across the business as a whole. So things like energy consumption, etc. So whereas the project is just focused on wasted food, we've also got this specialist company that can look at the energy savings across the whole of the business. Next slide, please. So the aims of the project, as I've said, it's to upskill officers. I mean, that's been brilliant because we've had RAP come in and they've actually done a training session for all our food safety officers. So officers now have that skills and knowledge to go out and visit businesses and give them hints and tips on how they can improve their wasted food, what they can do, who they can signpost it to, and also get businesses to sign up as part of our project and be Guardians of Grub. It's a chance to educate our businesses. A lot of the businesses go, why should we do this? What's the point? And we've got this one bin approach. Why don't we just put it in one bin if it's cheaper? So it's about educating businesses and showing the targets and showing the benefits. As I said, the economic benefits, a lot of businesses say, I don't want to do it because it's going to cost me money. But the actual reality is that the money that you put into reducing food waste, you actually save more money. So it is an economic benefit. We want to be able to measure that success. So we want to see where the businesses are now, how much food they're wasting, and then at the end of the project, we want that final figure. So if they put in these interventions or these interventions that we're trialing, where are we now? Where are we there then? So we've got a measurable figure that we can put into the report that says how much money they've saved, what's the effect on the carbon footprint of that business. We want to promote it through the media, good exposure. It's a great project, lots of interest. So this is what I really want to do is really promote it through the media, especially that wasted food action week in March, which is great as well because it ties in with what used to be PERDA, so we can get the councillors doing their quotes as well, and we've got quotes from various businesses to put into that, which is great. Case studies, we want to form case studies so businesses can say, we weren't interested in this scheme to start with, but we tried it and it works. Or get these case studies where perhaps it doesn't work and then look to learn from that. So it's about getting two sides of the spectrum. And then obviously we've got the Guardians of Grub with that working with RAP. So we're getting that information from who's signing up for the scheme to reduce their wasted food. Who wants to be a Guardian of Grub and show their certificates and get that training, get that education and looking at the benefits of reducing their wasted food. And then hopefully if we can get the businesses in such a manner that they're well aware of their wasted food and having good practices, then we've got that mentoring system, whereas we've got this where we can have a business come to us and say, look, I'm really interested in reducing my food waste, but how can I do it? And then we can then signpost them to a company that's done it and achieved it, and that business can then act as a mentoring business for that new business. So so yeah, lots of great aims for the project. Next slide, please. So the feedback so far, we've had a lot of positives from businesses. Businesses are very keen. You visit them, yet food waste is a thing that we want to do. How can I do it? You signpost them, we'll sign up for it, which is great. So a lot of interest, as I said, from schools. Schools are really interested in. They're getting the wasted food from. They prepare the meals for the kids, but sometimes the kids aren't eating it all. Hospitals where patients aren't eating their food, or just leave it, or it's presented at the wrong time of the day. A lot of companies are saying, we don't have the time to get in this project. We're a busy hospitality business. We've got enough paperwork doing HACCP, recording our temperatures, etc. Why would we want to engage in something this? We don't see the benefits of it. So these are the barriers. These are some of the barriers we're facing. And it is a difficult time for these types of businesses, but it's trying to educate them on what wasted food is and how we can reduce it. Costs, as I've said before, a lot of businesses are thinking, well, this is going to cost me something. Nothing comes for free. If I'm going to become more greener, it's going to cost me more money. If I'm going to reduce my wasted food, that's going to cost me more money. If I'm doing smaller portions, it might be a smaller portion and I'm saving money, but I'm not going to get the people coming in there to eat because they see it as a smaller portion. They see you skimping money. Other businesses saying, thanks, we appreciate what you're doing, but we're doing as much as we can. We think we're doing everything we can. All of our food goes into a food waste bin. We're fine, but what they don't look at is what they order, so to reduce that wasted food. So look at their ordering processes, whether they're ordering too much, whether they can reduce that, whether they can be more focused. Other businesses are saying, again, it goes for composting. We have a community scheme where all our food waste goes into compost, which again, it's great, but we want to reduce that food that goes into the compost. So they're really focusing at the start of the trail as opposed to the end of the trail. So lots of really useful feedback that obviously we can develop for the project as it goes along. Next slide, please. So these are the common food waste businesses that I've found so far just from visiting and chatting to the businesses. Milkshake bars, so those bars areas that produce milkshakes, so your Snickers and your ice creams and your yogurts go into the products. Coffee shops is another big one. A lot of them are keen to reduce their food waste, but they can't understand how because they've got these coffee grounds. Italian restaurants, pizza crusts are a large part of the waste. Nobody seems to want to eat pizza crust, but I'll chat about this in the next slide. Restaurants, as we say, they waste food but don't realise it or don't see the benefits of reducing that waste food. Hospitals, care homes, and an interesting one is the camping and caravan sites. So I've chatted with camping and caravan sites, and it's quite alarming that when people go on these camping and caravan sites, whereas at home they'll separate out their food waste into the different bins, plastics, cardboard, etc. The moment they go onto a camping caravan site, everything goes into a black bag and goes into that one receptacle. And the owners of the campsites are like furious. They've got their recycling facilities, but just for ease of use, the punters who are attending these camping and caravan sites just put it straight into the one bin. So this is quite an interesting one that I never thought of when I entered this project. But it seems those with like the tourist industry in their area, this could be a problem. Go on to the next slide, please. So as I said, we got these coffee grounds. So I've had a chat with I've had a look around, and the coffee grounds that are left over from a coffee business, there's a company that will come and collect these coffee grounds. They'll dry them and they can turn them into heat logs. So as part of the project further on, I want to trial that, get a few businesses to sign up to be able to get this membership so they can recycle their coffee grounds and turn into energy logs. As I've said with the Italian businesses, we've got pizza crust. Nobody knows what's to do with pizza crust, but we have come up with an idea for the pizza crust for these Italian businesses is to offer a dip. So you've got these pizza crusts at the end, and then you get this dip. So you can then dip your pizza into the dip, and then hopefully you may get less waste that way. So that's something that we may look at trialing in the future. Restaurants, etc. Bread leftover. So people will give them bread as part of the meal. but people won't eat the bread. So we've had one business that did offer bread as part of the meal, but now has stopped offering the bread free and put it as a chargeable service. So they were worried about the effect this would have on a business, whether that would reduce the customers, whether customers would go, well, you're not offering me free bread anymore. But what they've actually found is that the people are now buying the bread who want the bread, and because they're now getting that money as part of the bread, they can up their level of bread quality. So from a business point of view, they're offering better quality bread for customers that want it, and they're reducing their wasted food. We've got another business in our premise that does seafood. So that mussel shells are another one. What do you do with mussel shells? You eat the mussels. So, but this company has contacted, there's a local artist, and the local artist comes to collect the mussel shells from the business, washes them, and then produces art through the mussel shells. And it's really a great thing to look at. And in the bistro, they've got this art from the artist has made pinned up on their wall. So that's a really good one. Obviously, community fridges are now a popular thing. So businesses that have got food left over, then they'll put into these community fridges or food banks, which is used for, so people can just go to these fridges areas, pick up food, and then use them that way. And skin on foods is another one. So whereas reducing food waste, people have vegetables, peel the vegetables, potatoes, etc. So rather than peel the vegetables, why don't you just wash them thoroughly and then serve them like that? It is interesting that if you offer fries, there'll be one price. If you offer skin on the fries, the customer thinks, skin on fries. That sounds a more superior product, but it's actually less hassle for the business because they're just washing the potato as opposed to serving these fries. So again, it's just that behavioural science point of view bringing into the project in what you can do to make the customer more aware of food waste, but less for yourself. So that's an interesting one. So yeah, lots of great ideas on reducing wasted food, and hopefully we can get some more by the end of the project. Next slide. That's it. That's a brief overview of my project. Happy to take any questions. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Mike. I know there's been lots of interest in people wanting to find out the results of your project. So hopefully, when you're able to finish the work and write that report, I'm sure there'll be lots of interested parties. Has anyone got any questions for Mike while he's here?
Mike, I was going to say that there is I just put two things in the chat. I don't know whether you have that app called Too Good To Go.
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's an app that when you can actually get it downloaded, and it basically it's an interesting app because basically all the shops who are part of this process sell off food on half or and you get a kind of a doggy bag, a supplies bag. And certainly I know it operates in London, and I'm sure it operates across the country because you do have to put in your area. And I thought that was another way of dealing with food waste. So for instance, restaurants where they have cakes and what have you, and it's not finished at the end of the day, towards the end of the day, they put it on this app and people could go along and purchase it at a small charge. I don't know how effective they are in getting rid of all the things, but certainly it's an interesting way of dealing with it, food waste.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks for that.
So, and of course, I didn't see anything mentioned about best before dates or use by dates, which apparently are part of the problem. I mean, I did put in early on about Morrison's, they taking the dates off the milk and said, well, actually, it's left for people to smell the milk and determine. But I know there was a pushback about milk, the fact that some people haven't got a good sense of smell, re-COVID, etc. So I don't know whether that's something that people are considering as well as part of the reducing food waste.
Yeah, I think they're too good. They're too good to go. I can have a look at that and see whether that's come across to Somerset at the moment. But yeah, that's certainly a good initiative, and if that is available, then we'll look at that as well. With regards use by and the best before dates, again, I think that's an education for the members of the public to understand what the difference is between use by and best before. Businesses are well aware of it, but it's about educating that public so that they know the risks of using something past its use by date. But thanks for your input.
Yes, thank you. And as you say, the dating on food is an issue for the manufacturers, and so that's something that, as Mike said, it's an education element for consumers, but also those people that deal with manufacturers, putting the pressure on them to, is that date appropriate? But fundamentally, it's a food safety indication used by dates, so it's trying to maintain that balance. I appreciate we're just starting to run over a little bit, but thanks very much, Mike. That was really useful. I'm just going to quickly share my screen again, just to highlight a few of the other points that have come out from the net zero engagement that I've been doing. The Carbon Literacy Trust, they're an organisation, a charity that aims to give people effectively that sort of fundamental knowledge of green issues. And what we're investigating is whether there's a way that actually regulators can get involved with this. They do, as you can see from the slide, they do generic courses, they do courses for elected members and councillors, things like that, but there isn't a regulators one. So what we're planning to do is get some regulators to actually trial the e-learning element of the training, with a view that if it's appropriate, we might actually be able to open that up wider, ideally within this year, to allow people to get that fundamental knowledge so they can have an educated conversation with the businesses they interact with. Guardians of Grub, tackling food waste. Mike's mentioned this a few times. They're a great organisation to signpost people to, and there's lots of free resources on there. Another example that we're hoping to try and work with is something called Green Street. This is funded through the Bays Retail Sector Council, and they're piloting the first Green Street with Bradford City Council, who've also given them funding. The idea of this is it's focused on SMEs that don't have the same resources as larger businesses, but 30 retail and hospitality businesses to try different methods of working. And so what they're looking at is working with their LEPs to do green audits of the business, or what they're calling green opportunity reviews. So how can the business become greener? So they're looking wider than just emissions. So for example, they're looking at just simple things like saving energy and switching to renewables, or minimising packaging. And we're trying to make sure that there's the appropriate regulator input there, because, for example, changing your food packaging, is it food safe material? How does that impact on the life of the product? Saving energy could mean turning off the chillers overnight in a business, but how do they then maintain food safety, temperature monitoring and control, those sorts of things? And just they're offering greener choices. That comes again back to the issue of greenwashing. What is a greener choice, and who's actually checking those claims are legitimate? And finally, just a couple of sort of energy related bits. Some of you may be aware of the minimum energy efficiency standards, or MEES, and I know some authorities have actually piloted work on this pre-pandemic. But the reason for highlighting this specifically is I think this could be seen as an example of how regulation will evolve, where, as you can see from that timeline, the regulations came into place and there was a certain criteria at 2018 that was then raised the bar at 2020, and it's going to be raised again in 2023. So this, I can think, could be an example of how regulation will be used to ratchet up environmental standards. And finally, just something to possibly connect your businesses with. There's obviously lots of funding and different fund sources. They've just launched the full elements of this Heat Pump Ready Fund, which is a £1 billion fund looking at different elements of heat pump technology. So high density heat pump deployment, developing the tools and technologies to overcome the barriers for that deployment, and then the trialing, the support and learning linked to all of those. So it's something that's open to everyone, and the link's there. But if your authorities particularly interested in it, if your businesses that you work with are interested in doing more, then that fund is now open for people to sort of register their interest. So finally, it's really just to keep thinking, what are your local authorities actually doing? You know, do you have economic development teams or climate or green teams that are already doing something that actually you can contribute to, make sure that you're working together with what your authority's objectives are? The funding there, the three sort of main criteria again for the funding. We've had funding for net zero this year. We don't know what the funding position will be at the moment for next year. I'm hopeful we'll still be able to support net zero work with some funding, and it's that looking at where you can build it into your normal work, so it isn't another plate that's spinning. The work that Mike's done is a great pilot, but it is in addition to all of the other work. But as he's highlighted, how do we bring that into routine inspections, educating the officers so they can have those conversations? Equally, the green scheme I mentioned earlier in Rochdale, they're looking at building that into their regular interactions with businesses, just so they can have those conversations. And finally, just talk to us. You know, I've spoken to a lot of people over the last 12 months about working around net zero. Some of it has been steering you to other people. Some of it may be just having those conversations and helping you shape your projects. I'm very lucky to be able to talk to a wide range of people across the country that are looking to contribute to this. So I'm more than happy to have a chat with anyone about any net zero project ideas they have. Just drop me an email, and we're 8 minutes over time at the moment. But if anyone has any thoughts, questions, comments they'd like to share, please put your hand up, come on camera, or we'll end up all going for an early lunch. No, it seems like a deadly silence. Thank you very much. I was really lucky to have more material for this this webinar than I could fit in. As you can see, we've already overrun. Some of that we'll share through the SRNs and the PARGs and our LD bulletin. But thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. And if you're interested in this area, please drop me a line, and more than happy to have a conversation with anyone about their work. Thank you very much.